You unlock this door with the key of imagination.
TV Crazy Man here. On this video, I discuss the Twilight Zone episode that has so many unintentional coincidences and connections to Superman and Batman, it'll make you think you stepped into the Twilight Zone yourself.
We've got to get out of here. I'm scared.
I was watching this old episode of the Twilight Zone, and I was amazed at how many connections I found to Superman and Batman in this one episode entitled Caesar and Me.
Jonathan West, ventriloquist, a master of voice manipulation.
It's not really the best Twilight Zone episode I've ever seen, but the amount of coincidences I found in connection to DC Comics' most famous superheroes is just downright freaky. It's almost as if the Twilight Zone mingled with the world of DC Comics for one episode.
Holy roller coasters!
The episode in question was Caesar and Me. It originally aired on April 10th, 1964. In the very first scene, it got my attention right away. The main star of this particular episode was Jackie Cooper, who is in the first scene is playing a poor ventriloquist that has to pawn off his grandfather's watch.
I'm afraid that's all I can give you.
Right away I noticed it's Jackie Cooper, the actor that played Perry White in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and he's pawning his watch off to Stafford Repp, the actor that played Chief O'Hara on the 60s Batman series.
You know what this means, don't you?
If you're thinking what I'm afraid you're thinking...
It's like Great Shades of Elvis. Wait a minute, the title of this episode is Caesar and Me, and Perry White's most famous catchphrase was, of course, Great Caesar's Ghost. But this was more than a decade before Cooper would play Perry White.
Not only does he have a snappy, punchy prose style, but he is, in my 40 years in this business, the fastest typist I've ever seen.
Interesting coincidence, you say. Not much to see here, you might say. But it doesn't stop there. It's just begun.
I'm sorry, Mr. West.
Wait, what's that? Cooper's last name is West?
Holy coincidence, Lord!
Adam West would play Batman less than 2 years later. And what's this? Cooper's first name is Jonathan? Everybody knows Jonathan's the first name of Superman's adopted father.
Uncanny photographic mental processes.
Cooper's character is a down-and-out ventriloquist whose dummy actually talks and convinces him to turn to a life of crime to pay his bills.
Listen to me. This is the big one.
But this is the last one. The end for me.
Yeah, sure.
Coincidentally, one of Batman's rogues gallery is a villain named the ventriloquist. There are actually 3 versions of this character. The first one appeared in 1988, years after this episode was made. Now, if you think this dummy looks familiar, that's because he's the same dummy they used for the 1962 Twilight Zone episode, The Dummy, which starred another ventriloquist with a live dummy played by, get this, Spider-Man's Uncle Ben, Cliff Robertson, who also played on 5 episodes of the 60s Batman as a villain named Shane.
Don't make a move, Batman, or I'll fill you full of lead.
You can't frighten us with a vague threat, Shame.
Whether or not this is supposed to be the same dummy from the previous episode in the story, I don't think was ever said, but it would make sense if it was. But in the 1962 episode, the dummy is named Willie, while the latter one is named Caesar. But of course, maybe he changed his name because he was in hiding. He is an evil, crooked dummy.
You big dummy!
The dummy was modeled after actor George Murdoch, who played in several episodes of The X-Files, and coincidentally, an episode of Smallville, and an episode of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. After failing at an audition with his dummy, Jonathan West heads to the unemployment office, where he meets Batman. Well, the voice of the Super Friends Batman, Olan Soule.
So that's what they've been up to. An entire army of villains to do their evil bidding.
He did the voice of Batman as a Super Friend for years until Adam West joined the show and they moved Olan over to doing the voice of Professor Stein. Interestingly enough, Soule only weighed 135 pounds. You know, in the comics, Batman is supposed to weigh about 210 pounds. According to one source I read, Adam West was actually pretty close to Batman's height and weight, coming in at 6'2" and at 196 pounds.
The electrical shock demagnetized the slide.
Soule's first gig as Batman started on the Filmation series The Batman Superman Hour way back in 1968, a few years before the Super Friends, as well as the voice of Alfred on that series, and he did the voice of Batman for a couple of Scooby-Doo team-up movies. Oh, and believe it or not, he appeared on the 60s Adam West Batman series once as a newscaster. Think of it, 2 Batmans in one episode, and it wouldn't be the last time, for Soule and West would both be on the Super Friends legendary Super Power show together years later. Bizarre, strange, believe it or not. All these coincidences and connections to Superman and Batman in what we might call Easter eggs today were done seemingly without purpose or intent, years before they were even relevant in the Twilight Zone. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, hit the bell for future notifications, and have a great day.